Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, and share buttons. Well, I've never put out two special alerts in 1 week before, at least not that wasn't a planned part one, part two. These I don't put out a whole lot of these. They're really reserved for highly significant geopolitical global events that have implications for setting the stage for fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy. And so, as you remember, on Monday, we had a special alert where we talked about Houthi attacks on container ships in the Red Sea and the implications of that geopolitically on the global stage and for United States superpower status and how that directly related to Bible prophecy. Well, now, as part of that video, we talked about the potential for seeing that situation escalate. And now here we are, 3 days later, and I didn't plan on creating this video, but we have to based on the events that have just transpired. So let's start with this right here. This is from The Guardian. It says, Houthis call West bluff with renewed Red Sea drone assault. And this says, a week ago, the US and the UK and 10 other, mostly Western nations told Yemen's Houthi rebels that they would, quote, bear the consequences if they launched further attacks on merchant shipping in the southern Red Sea. For a brief period, 6 days, the Houthis paused before at 9:15 p.m. on Tuesday launching their most sophisticated attack yet. 18 drones, described by the British as of Iranian design, and 3 missiles appear to have targeted a fleet of warships in and around the 18-mile-wide Bab el-Mandab Strait, where the Red Sea comes closest to Houthi-controlled Yemen. Though they were all shot down, the brazen nature of the attack was not lost on Western politicians. So guys, here they're targeting not container ships, but directly warships. U.S. warships that are part of the Operation Prosperity Guardian that's trying to free the shipping lanes in the Red Sea. So while they've had some attacks in the past, nothing of this nature or this large. So this goes on. It says, Anthony Blinken, the U.S. Secretary of State, on a trip to Bahrain, the only Arab country to publicly sign up to last week's warning, said on Wednesday, if this continues, as it did yesterday, there will be consequences. They keep saying that. Where are the consequences? It says in Britain, the Defense Secretary, Grant Shapps, said, quote, watch this space and warn the current situation, quote, cannot continue. And so this article is from this morning. As this is being recorded, there's news stories that there are meetings tonight, that there could be an attack, a coalition attack on the launch positions of these drones in Yemen later tonight. That may be coming out into the news as you see this. I'm not sure. So we'll keep our eyes posted on that, looking for that. But it goes on. It says, what began as an opportunistic Houthi campaign targeting merchant shipping traveling south of the Suez Canal in mid-October. And again, this is the opinion of this piece. So we don't know that it began that way. We know that's what it appeared to be. But this could have been planned months or years in advance as part of a follow-on to what happened October 7th. So we'll talk about that more in a minute of what is the purpose of all of this. And I think there is one. I think I know what it is. We'll see in a moment. But it says, in support of Hamas in Gaza appears to have become something different. A determined attempt to attack and provoke a retaliation from Washington as the U.S. electoral cycle is heating up, bringing the UK and other allies alongside. And again, okay, this is an opinion. It's not necessarily a fact that it should be in a news story, but why would they do that? Why would they just try to provoke a retaliation from Washington in the middle of the electoral cycle? What does that gain them? Now, if the electoral cycle plays any part in this, I believe that most likely it's that they feel, well, before Joe Biden leaves office, we need to hurry up and attack while the U.S. is at its weakest. Because if somebody else comes into office who's not so weak, then we may have lost our opportunity, so we need to strike now. But I think there's more to this that has really nothing to do with the U.S. electoral cycle and what their aims are. So let's see what else it says. It says, prior to Tuesday night, 61 drones had been fired in 25 attacks. But in the early evening, a group of 18, probably the relatively inexpensive Delta Wing Shahed 136, appear to have been aimed at the warships directly. 7 were shot down by HMS Diamond. Attacking in a swarm is a tactic taken from Ukraine. And guys, we're going to do a follow-on video with this, God willing. That was my intent coming before all of this news started breaking of how warfare has changed. We're seeing the swarms appear. This is not the swarm drones we've been talking about for years. This is very rudimentary swarm techniques and drones on a very crude level. But these attacks are only going to grow in sophistication as time goes by. But it says where several Shahed drones are deployed in an effort to overwhelm local air defenses. And even when they are all stopped, it imposes cost on the defenders. That is a big point to draw out of this, guys, because for the Houthi rebels, they cannot lose doing this. If they launch these drones and these missiles and they aren't intercepted and they hit their targets, well, they'll consider that a success. But if they're shot down, they also consider that a success. Why? Well, let's look at the cost involved, and we talked about this some in the past. Here we see a map of the area we're talking about, but it says here, a Shahed 136 cost $20,000 to make, while missiles for HMS Diamond's Sea Viper defense system cost 1 million to 2 million pounds a time, although the cost of losing a warship or human lives is far greater. No doubt about that. But, and I love the way they start with, it's $20,000. And then they switch to pounds over here. Well, that's close to $1.3 million to $2.6 million when you look at the conversion rate between the dollars and pounds. So we're looking at many multiples of that to, 100 times the amount. So for every dollar in drones they spend, Operation Prosperity Guardian forces are expending $100 in munitions to take them down. Am I doing my math right on that? I think I've got that right. Somewhere around that area. Guys, and we'll look at some numbers later. I think this is underestimating the cost involved here, to where this is unsustainable from simply a cost standpoint to continue doing this. So here we had this escalation of attacks. We have, despite all these warnings, the Houthis have not stopped. Now they're escalating the attack with the biggest attack they've done yet, the most drones in a single attack, and on warships, not on commercial vessels. And then this morning we have this. Iran hijacks oil tanker in Gulf of Oman. It says breaking, Iran seized a oil tanker in the Gulf of Oman that was in the center of a dispute between Iran and the U.S. So originally this tanker was carrying sanctioned Iranian oil bound for Turkey. It was seized by the United States. Now we have Iran seizing it back. Armed gunmen coming on board the vessel, taking it over, diverting it to Iran. We talked about in the past this area right here. This is the Persian Gulf. This is the Gulf of Oman. Here we had the Strait of Hormuz. And this is a much more important choke point for international trade, is the way to say it, because of, I think it's about 40% of all the world's exportable oil flows through this corridor right here. So if we see, and we talked about this several times in previous videos, what if the Red Sea, part of what's happening there is just a test to see what the reaction's going to be, so that the same thing could start to happen here. And so now we get to, well, is this a one-off event? Or are we going to start seeing what we've seen in the Red Sea take place in the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf? And so this comes down to, is this a one-off event, or what are we going to see as a result of this? What is, because this is Iran acting here. These are Iranian-made drones. The Houthis are funded and supported by Iran. They aren't doing this without the approval of Iran. So what is Iran trying to gain here? We've talked about the implications for the BRICS nations versus the West and controlling this vital corridor for international trade. We've talked about the implications in the last video for the United States as the world's global superpower, the ability to project naval power around the world and to ensure that international waters are freely navigable for free trade, and how that isn't happening right now. As you see, it's empty. We have all these ships rerouted at much higher cost. But what are the Iranian goals? And so let's go back to the stated reason for the Houthis, which is in protest to Israel and Israel's attacks on Hamas, and that they're going to attack these vessels because of the support of Israel. Now, we know that these nations that are coming against Israel, they're trying to use international support to put pressure on Israel. We've seen that happen with the ongoing conflicts since October 7th. They're trying to put a stop to the Israeli assault on Gaza through international pressure. It isn't working because Israel sees the existential threat. They're determined and moving forward. But what other pressure can be applied? Because a lot of these nations, they might pay lip service because it doesn't directly impact them. But what does? Well, this, container ships not able to travel to their destinations, and energy potentially not able to travel to its destinations. So think about what's happened recently. We've had numerous successful Israeli attacks on high-profile Hamas and Hezbollah targets. Terrorist commanders at a high level have been taken out by Israel. Iran is looking at this and seeing years of assets that they've built up in southern Lebanon taken out. What, unless they're willing, are they on the precipice of unleashing that force before they lose it based on Israel taking it out? Or are they going to try to use this process of international pressure to stop those attacks from Israel by shutting down these critical waterways? We can't rule that out. We have the potential for that. But think about this for a moment now in terms of freeing these waterways from attacks. Is Israel alone capable of doing that? I would say the answer is no. Israel does not have the naval power alone to do that. I'm not sure if anybody does. Now, Israel could stop the attacks by simply, nuclear annihilation of Yemen or Iran. I don't think they're going to do that in this instance. So the point in bringing this up is to say Israel alone cannot stop this. This is on the U.S. Navy and this coalition, Operation Prosperity Guardian. Now, question is, can they do it? Do they have the will to do it? Again, there's talk that this coalition may launch attacks on the positions from which these attacks have been launched in Yemen, which would be a first. They've simply shot down these projectiles, these drones, these missiles, or boats that have tried to come in and hit container vessels. But they haven't gone to the source of where these are coming from and attacked anything. Will they do that? Are they on the verge of doing that? If they do that, then what does that mean for wider escalation of war? Because I think this is what Joe Biden, right or wrong, has been reluctant to do because he doesn't want an escalating war with Iran. If this attack takes place, does it mean war with Iran? Does it mean closing of the Straits of Hormuz? Does it mean $300 a barrel oil? That's something to think about. The other thing to think about is, what if Operation Prosperity Guardian, really the United States Navy, when it comes down to it, either doesn't stop these attacks, or even worse, can't stop these attacks? What does that mean? And guys, I don't see how this ends well, because I could make a pretty good argument that they can't stop these attacks. That short of, as I just said with Israel, short of nuclear annihilation of Yemen or complete occupation of the entire country, it's going to be very difficult to stop a determined Houthi rebel enemy from launching these attacks, because we're not talking about, well, they're at airfield XYZ and they're launching these bombers and then they're trying to bomb ships, and so we're just going to go bomb XYZ airfield and now they can't launch their attacks. We're not talking about that type of conventional warfare. We're talking about small drones that can be launched from almost anywhere in the country, that can be hidden easily underground, that can be put with civilian populations. And we've seen how reluctant Western powers are to attack the enemy when they're surrounded by civilians, because they lose the PR war. So how do you prevent these attacks? I'm not sure that you can. And if you can't, then has it already been lost? Has this battle, maybe even this war, already been lost? Now, I'm not talking about Israel on October 7th. I'm talking about U.S. ability to project naval power across the globe and open up these shipping lanes for free trade. If the United States cannot do that, that is a big problem. What happens, again, if some of these attacks actually succeed? What if a U.S. naval ship is sunk? That has enormous implications beyond just the sinking of that particular ship and that crew. It would signal to the world what we may be really well witnessing, is that the United States military has lost its technological advantage, and it's no longer a deterrent force on the world stage. In the past, 20, 30 years ago, you send U.S. warships into the Red Sea. No one's messing with that, because, as I said before, you're launching attacks from XYZ airfield and you would be wiped out. But now, with the rise of these drones that can be launched from anywhere and easily concealed, It's not clear that the conventional weapons that are at the heart of the U.S. Navy are able to do that. And so what does that mean? What does it mean if we see an escalation of this conflict, if we see war with Iran, or we see Iran start to do in the Persian Gulf and in the Gulf of Oman what we see the Houthis doing in the Red Sea? What does that mean for oil and energy prices? And we've talked before about financial collapse and the calamity that we're on the precipice of this house of cards global financial system collapsing. If we saw $300 oil, that would do it. That would expedite that financial collapse instantly. If you had the Persian Gulf closed, the free flow of oil market prices was not coming through the Persian Gulf as of tomorrow, well, you would see a complete meltdown of the global financial system, because somebody out there, people say, oh, no, they were hedged against these rising oil prices. Yes, if oil goes from $70 to $80, that's not going to break anything. But if it goes from $70 a barrel to $300 a barrel, it's going to break a whole lot of things. And the people who think they're insured against that because they have options, well, we've got this contract that pays us if that happens and helps us deal with that risk. Well, no, because that financial institution that made that promise would be bankrupt. And then you have financial contagion throughout the system. So, guys, we're looking at the potential for a major escalation in the Middle East with Israel at the center. Obviously, that has major implications for Bible prophecy. No doubt about it. And with what I just said, I would note, not being conspiratorial in any way, but I would note that in the United States, this coming weekend is a 3-day weekend. Monday is a federal holiday. It's Martin Luther King Day. The banks are closed on Monday. As I've been saying before, I would make sure that tomorrow you have a full tank of gas and a deep pantry, because we could be looking at an escalation of this later tonight, tomorrow. I don't know. I'm just going by what the news is telling me right now and what may have to happen. I don't see how the U.S. and its allies cannot respond to these attacks. And we don't know what's going to happen once that happens. So be prepared. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus. Guys, all of this, it may sound like bad news, but again, this is just a sign of the times in which we live. And those signs indicate one thing very clearly: Jesus is coming. So do everything you can with whatever time we have left to do the work that God put you here to do. Stand for righteousness. Tell people the good news. Tell people about the hope you have in Jesus Christ. So I don't know how much longer we have left, but guys, things look like they are on the verge of escalation right now. They could calm down. We have no way of knowing. But again, you look at the situation, it compels a response from the United States and its allies. And I don't necessarily know that that response is going to be effective. If they don't respond, then that's just as bad, if not worse. I don't see how the U.S. and its allies win in this scenario, meaning they're able to prevent these attacks from taking place and open up the Red Sea. Really don't see how that happens. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I think this is a big deal, and your attention should be drawn to this. You should be made aware of this. I don't see a lot of the mainstream media talking about this, but this is highly significant. And I think that's probably why they're not talking about it. We know much of the mainstream media is parroting the narrative of the military-industrial complex, plain and simple. And they don't want us to see how precarious the situation is for U.S. naval military power and the ability to project power across the globe, that we're really at a time where we're an inflection point where we're seeing change on a massive scale, change similar to what we saw beginning with World War I, the end of World War I, the beginning of World War II, the end of World War II, the end of the Cold War. It's one of these, there's an end of an era and there's the beginning of a new era. And that's where we're at right now. We're in that in-between, and we're seeing, we don't know what's going to happen yet. So that's why we should be watching this area closely. But let me know what you think. Leave your comments below. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons, and God willing, I will see you next time. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Britt on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.